This is the Welcome to Humanity podcast with thought leader and transformative psychiatrist, Dr. Fred Moss. This show focuses on the betterment of humanity on a global scale. Each episode will leave you enlightened, inspired, and ready to make an impact in your world. Welcome to the show. Welcome to your life. Welcome to humanity. Here's Dr. Fred.
Hello, and welcome to another wonderful episode of the Welcome to Humanity podcast. My name is Dr. Fred Moss, and I am the host and founder of the Welcome to Humanity podcast. On this podcast, we tend to interview people who are just fascinating and often don't even know how fascinating they are, or sometimes think they're fascinating in directions that we later discover they didn't even know they were about to present. So that's one of the things that is likely to happen today. I have met Zail. I guess I met him physically a few months ago at Harbin Hot Springs, and he is a friend, a very close friend, a dancing tango friend of my wife, Alexandra. And we had crossed paths a lot when we lived down in Los Angeles, because Zail would come pick up Alex for dance sessions that they would go out to in the evening. And we didn't really get to know each other, but I knew a lot about Zail, only because Alexandra was so fond of him. So when we finally did spend a time at Hot Springs and really got to know each other a little bit more, it was completely delightful. And it's only been a matter of time before I've been lucky enough to nail down a time that worked for both of us so that he could be on the Welcome to Humanity podcast and share himself with you, our listeners. So welcome to the Welcome to Humanity podcast, Zail. It's just a pleasure to have you here.
Dr. Fred, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
It really is great to have you. So, Zail, how do you pronounce your last name?
Khalsa, like salsa.
Like salsa. Okay, but it starts with KH, right?
Yeah, the H is silent.
And of course, the H is silent. And what is the nationality, or where does that come from? Khalsa.
Well, my family is Bohemian, so they're from Wrocław in the southwest of what's now Poland. When it was in Germany, it would be called, I think, Bratislav. But Wrocław was the capital of the historical Bohemian Empire. And my name means, Zail means the power of the sea in one perspective. And it can also mean wisdom or king, like the kingdom of wisdom, the territory of wisdom. Yeah. So
the power of the sea and the kingdom of wisdom.
Yes.
Wow. And how about Khalsa? Where's that?
Khalsa means someone on a spiritual path, let's say, would be the
goodness.
easiest way of saying it.
So the power of the sea,
which is probably why I'm a surfer.
The power of the sea. What did you say? The wisdom?
The kingdom of wisdom.
Kingdom of wisdom. Wow. And then on a spiritual journey.
Yeah, technically. So my name taken together could mean the lion who guards the kingdom of wisdom.
All right. Well, let's just do that. The lion who guards the kingdom of wisdom. And what a great segue into the introduction of really who you are. So you say that with really remarkable grace, Zail. You know, the lion who keeps his eye out on the kingdom of wisdom is quite a role. You know, this is a responsibility. This is an accountability that is not for everybody. And, you know, showing up as a lion, the king of the jungle, my animal name also is Heart of a Lion. So I have a special affection for that particular cat. There's something about really taking on what that means in this earthly lifetime. Is that something that you've taken on by yourself during this opportunity down here?
Yes, certainly. I think it's both a challenge, a obligation, a responsibility, and also I think a koan.
Say more about that.
think I've had to figure out what it meant to me and how I was going to manifest that in my life. And it's been an interesting journey figuring out exactly what that name meant to me.
Okay. Each and every one of us is really dealing with something, right? No matter whether we're tackling some of the big problems in the world or maybe even the tiny ones, we all face challenges. Now, I've been a psychiatrist for many years, and I've worked with all kinds of people from all walks of life. I've worked with more people than I can really count, from various backgrounds, dealing with more issues than you can imagine, of all sizes and shapes. So naturally, over time, I've developed a number of ways to assist others in gaining a new sense of freedom and empowerment. Now, I'm pulling back the curtain on one of those methodologies, and I'm going public, revealing the process and associated mindset that contributed to using this particular method with maximum effectiveness. It's all laid out in my new book called Creative 8, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression. You can pick this book up on Amazon.com in either Kindle or paperback format. And as a listener to the Welcome to Humanity podcast, I'd like to offer you a completely free copy in audiobook format. Just go to welcometohumanity.net/creative and download your free audiobook copy of Creative 8 today. I really look forward to hearing about your Creative 8 breakthrough. Now, let's get back to this amazing conversation. Welcome to humanity. All right. Well, we have done a great job to get us to step one of this interview, which is really, if you've listened to any of the others, I often ask my guests this particular question. I call it the 9-letter question, because there's a total of 9 letters here, but it's a powerful question. And, it's one that really opens up the gates so that we can learn a little bit more about really what makes Zail Khalsa tick. So here it is. Zail Khalsa, who are you?
The world might define me first as a man, a white male, a white American male living in Los Angeles, age 62 years, in a committed relationship with Rosie, who you've met.
Mm-hmm.
A doctor of chiropractic, a guitarist, a musician, a yogi, a meditator, a surfer, and maybe a tango dancer. Although we haven't had tango now for a year. I guess you could define me by those labels or terms.
Well, that's what the world would define you as.
Yes, so, yeah. I would see myself. I'm on a streak of about, well, I guess today was day 1963 of unbroken streak of daily meditation. And I've been meditating since I was 18, but never this consistently. And right now I'm doing I'm using the Calm meditation app as a warm up, and then I'm doing Sam Harris's Waking Up app every day. And I guess I've come to identify with the perspective that I am the field of consciousness that's experiencing what I'm able to experience through this particular mind body. And I guess I'm part of that field of awareness.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, there's something both formless and completely beautiful about this self-description. I just want to acknowledge that. So the formlessness leaves me a bit diffuse as I choose where to inquire. So I want to also acknowledge that, because any linear direction I take from this self-assessed introduction, self-referential introduction, will take us down a path that leads us unable to go down other paths based on the fact that I have to ask a linear question.
Mm-hmm.
Given all that, and the mercy that I'm asking for you to have for me as I explore whatever other direction we're going to go, I'd like to point to this, both the form and the formlessness of this 1963 days of continual meditation or daily meditation that has has had its dips and turns, but has been a daily practice.
Well, I think it has evolved into continual meditation.
Mm. Okay, say that's a great one. So talk to us a little bit more. What is that? That means between the sittings, you're still meditating. I suppose that's what you're referencing.
One hopes.
Okay. Yeah.
that's that's the goal.
Okay. And so what are you finding, or what could one who would only wonder, what does Zail get, or what do we get out of Zail in his, daily Sam Harris to now? I suppose it hasn't been Sam Harris for 1963 days, but it's what's evolved to where you are now. What is it that you get to bring? Where's your gold? What do we get to enjoy by being on the same, astral plane as you now, or the same earthly existence as you? What is it that we get to enjoy, or you get to enjoy, that comes out of this practice?
Well, certainly a me that's more uh, present. If there is a me, and I'm not sure there is, there's less, I guess there's less distortions and interferences between the world and the theoretical myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure there is a myself anymore.
Yeah,
But
I got that. So there's something, but the less distortions, you seem to be sure about, or at least semi confident that there's less distortions.
yes, I am. I feel I'm more accurately perceiving both my internal and external. I'm more aware of my both internal and external world.
All right.
And
So
there's less, let's say, there's less junk in the way, less,
less junk. Okay.
yeah, less fuzz, like if you're playing guitar, it's the fuzz pedals turned off.
Okay.
The notes are more articulate and defined.
Mm-hmm. All right. So given all of that, where there seems like there's a greater alignment, perhaps, or maybe some. I don't. Excuse me for introducing that, but alignment or resonance or clarity, are these words that you could also use?
Certainly.
Okay.
It's they're trying to put the experience of higher consciousness into words
Right.
sort of pigeonholes the experience
Mm-hmm.
and makes it seem maybe less significant than what it really is.
Right. Yeah, I think you're pointing to the exact thing I was pointing to earlier, that if you're going to speak to yourself that way, I have to choose sort of a direction, and if I choose a direction away from the overall totality of it, I cheapen what it is that you said simply by asking anything about it. And so, yeah, we're seem to both be struggling with linearity in an issue or an experience that does not readily lend itself to linearity or language when describing or trying to communicate the experience itself.
I'm
So,
I'm just a normal person.
right.
I don't have any airs of being a spiritual or holy or religious person. I've just found that if I develop certain habits and routines, of which the keystone one seems to have been meditation, that by being very solid and consistent with my daily meditation, then I've been able to add on to that. I practice what is known as, I guess in the West, win the morning, win the day. It's been popularized by Tim Ferriss in his book, Tools of Titans. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a technique that you could say goes back an infinitely long time. It would be called having a daily sadhana or a daily spiritual practice. You get up early in the morning and you devote 1/10 of your day to, I guess my spiritual teacher would say, if you don't take out the garbage, the kitchen starts to stink.
Mm-hmm.
My daily sadhana is to get up, take a cold shower, which I've done every day of my adult life.
So that's more than 1963 days.
Yeah, just a little bit more.
Yeah.
That one I'm probably getting closer to the 10,000 hour thing on.
Mhm.
Um,
You should know something. I might as well share it with our listeners that I knew that about you. You know, you had mentioned that when we were at Harbin, and it's been had a major impact on me. And every single morning since I've seen you, I have not missed a shower because I knew that you weren't. Just to let you know, and I mean that, including this morning and yesterday morning and yesterday morning. And not that I really wanted to miss a shower. I take a 3 minute, you know, as cold as it can be, at least 3 minutes of a shower every morning, and I really do appreciate that. But almost always, I'm referencing you telling me that, and me learning that you were on a daily streak without, you know, without fail. And so I fell in behind you, and you really have had that impact on me.
for some reason, I'm reminded of the coldest shower I ever took in my life. I was fly fishing on Upper Klamath Lake in southern Oregon, and the water that comes out of the bottom of Crater Lake comes out at Upper Klamath Lake. And so the showers in the camping facility we were at was the 33-degree
33 degrees.
water coming out from the bottom of Crater Lake. And
Wow.
it was the most glorious shower I've ever had in my life,
Yeah.
but it was certainly very, very, very cold.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something very therapeutic. You know, I've been looking at the physiology of the cold shower and any kind of, you know, breathing or meditative practice that I don't quite have the thousands of days in a row worked out, but several times per week. And you know, the shower fits in. The shower and the breathing really do fit in. And I get that you wake up, you get that shower done first.
Yeah, immediately. That's like
Hmm.
up and then, well, I do make my bed first, like they do in the military.
Yeah,
Have learned that
your first victory. Yeah,
that's maybe, that's a very effective habit.
yeah.
Is I'm not a very habitual person. I don't want to come across saying I'm actually quite the opposite. I'm what you might call a vata in Ayurveda, which is like the wind. And
Hmm.
so the wind is changeable. So, but for me, habit and routine is balancing. I guess I want to reference here the filmmaker David Lynch, and there's a YouTube clip of him being interviewed, and the interviewer asks him, David Lynch is a film director,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
known for
Blue Velvet, and Twin Peaks,
Twin Peaks.
and
Yes,
a daily TMer, as I remember call it
yes,
too. Yep,
yes.
mhm,
But
yep.
even so, they asked him, Mr. Lynch, I understand that for the last 10 years, you've eaten a hamburger at a specific In-N-Out burger at 2:30 every day. And he goes, yeah, that's true. And they asked him why. And he says, well, when you make the habitual part of your life habitual and routine, and you have a specific routine, then you're completely free mentally to dream up anything you want, to be creative. Creative types are very open. They're high on the openness scale, the big five scale, Jordan Peterson. But the issue with that is it can lead to neuroticism. So if you're going to be
Hmm.
extremely open, you have to, in my experience and in Dr. Peterson's, that you have to counterbalance it through industriousness, I guess is the word, um, which is having good habits and routines. And for me,
Hmm.
I found I freed up my creative energies by being more habitual and or having specific habits and routines that were constructive, and that over time, like, you can accomplish a lot more in 10 years than you can in 2 weeks. A 10-year lifestyle is much more effective than a 2-week diet.
Hmm.
So I've focused on doing a daily sadhana. So I get up, make my bed, take my cold shower, and then I would do the hardest of what the current things I'm doing is. So for a while at the start, that was having a daily meditation. I had been a meditator since I started TM in 1976, when I saw a sign on the psychology building door of at the University of Rochester, where I went to college.
I got my TM 1 year later in 1977 after seeing a sign on the psychology door at the
Yeah,
University
I
of
guess it was a
Michigan,
common
just to
way to
let you know.
start TM in those days.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I started TM, but I found I had great difficulty sitting still. And so that led me to yoga, and I started doing lots of yoga, Kundalini yoga, Ashtanga yoga, integral yoga. I met all the founding fathers. Swami Satchidananda, I studied with. I studied for many years with Yogi Bhajan. I studied with Patabi Joyce. I studied with Iyengar, all the guys that created the different yogas that we have now.
Hmm.
But I sort of got
Hmm.
away from meditating daily. And so for me at the beginning, the hard habit was the most difficult habit was to meditate every day. So immediately after my shower, I meditated for first I started with 10 minutes a day, and then it became 30 minutes a day, and then it became an hour a day. That core habit then led me to want to integrate other routines. And so since tango stopped a year ago, I picked back up guitar, which I had taken a 10-year sabbatical from to learn tango. There's a story that goes a young tango dancer goes to the old milonguero, which is a guy who's been dancing for years. And in a milonga, which is a place, a bar where you'd go to dance tango, the old guys would have their table and they would be there their night, every week for eternity. And so the young lady asked the old dancer, Maestro, is tango your hobby? And he says, Mi querida, my lovely, um, heroin is a hobby. Tango is an addiction.
Hmm.
And so there wasn't much time for anything else besides tango. So I took a break from guitar and surfing. And with the advent of the pandemic, I'll call it, I took back up guitar. So I've spent half an hour every morning playing scales, which for me require a really intense amount of concentration. So I practiced dexterity things and scales for half an hour first thing now every morning, because that's the most difficult habit. And then I'll do my meditation, and then I'll do an hour of weightlifting.
Hmm.
And that's my morning. That's about takes about 2.5, 3 hours every day.
So when you wake up early, you wake up at
No, I don't get
six
particularly. I
something,
don't get up
five something.
particularly early. I get up at about 7, with the sun usually. Yeah, I get
Okay.
up when the sun comes up. Yeah. At times I had done the 4 a.m. get up and meditate for 3 hours before the sunrise routine for many years, and but tango tends to be a late night event, so I picked more of a modest thing. I tend to go to bed at 11 o'clock and get up at 7, so I sleep a solid 8 hours.
So I'm actually in the midst of a challenge, being challenged to get my next routine in place for me. And so I'm listening and watching. I hang around with some people who have some pretty awesome routines, and I'm sort of picking and choosing what works for me. And one of the things I've noticed, and it's elementary, I'm sure to you, is that the morning routine literally starts the night before. Because if I love my nighttime, Zail. Between 11 and 3, between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. is my magic time. I just assume be up every day. I wish every day would be between 11 p.m. and 3. That's just where I live. I just have so much peace with a fire or just chill and the darkness and the stars and the quiet. By fire I'm just saying a fireplace, and it's just for me it's always been that way. When I worked back in the University of Michigan days and just before, I loved working at the pizzeria, and part of the reason for that was it closed at 2 a.m. So that left me up at that time. And now, in order to have a routine that looks like what you're talking about, I'm incorporating what to do with this 11 to 3. And when I get to sleep or get to bed at 11 or anywhere near 11, I have a full night's sleep and I get into stage 4 REM and REM, and I actually wake up rested and all these crazy things that I'm simply not used to. But is it for you? It doesn't really start when you wake up. When you say you fall asleep at 11, that's part of the routine. Am I right
Yeah,
there?
I really started about going to sleep at about 9.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to do my yoga and stretching in the evening, and I have a series of yoga and like say you might think of it in like the way Iyengar would do sustained poses where to correct my particular spinal issues I hold a pose for somewhere like 20 to 30 minutes, and I usually do
Hmm.
2 to 3 different ones, and that sort of unwinds me. It gets me away from the TV and blue light. And so from 10 to 11, I'm definitely unwinding and preparing for bed. And then I'll meditate again before bed. So that takes about an hour and a half in the evening. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But well, I guess I wanted to
Okay.
interrupt and say, well, as you well know,
Yeah.
tango, the better dancers tend to show up at late. So a tango event may start at 9. I would typically show up just before midnight.
Right.
Never come too early to a party. Don't be the
Right.
first to
No.
arrive or the last to leave at a party. Be the last to
Right.
arrive and the first to
Right.
leave. It's usually the best routine. Tango is a dance until 2, 3 in the morning kind of thing. So for the 10 years that I was doing tango, I think there were periods of time where I didn't miss dancing, like danced every single day for at least a couple years out of those. It's now actually about 12 years that I've been a tango dancer. So there's a certain amount of obsessive compulsiveness that's necessary to master tango. And it's a late night thing.
Yes.
So during that period of time, my routine shifted. Like I would do things before I went out to tango, more stuff before I went out to tango.
Mm-hmm. So you really are a creature of habit, and we all are. And I know you don't want to be known as that or be thought of as that, but you have a pretty strong and beautiful morning routine. And it sounds like, especially now that tango, which was already in its own self a trumping evening routine, one that was so tremendous that it easily displaced what else you were doing instead, or what you've now done since it's hopefully temporarily shut down. One of the things I really wonder about, I know that your occupation or your avocation, anyways, is as a
Yes.
chiropractor and a doctor of chiropractor, you say. And I wonder how much of what you do leaks into, or maybe is at the forefront of the care that you provide for the people who come see you for your chiropractor services.
Yeah, I think it's fundamental or critical to be able to. There's the saying, if you have an hour to cut down a tree, spend 50 minutes sharpening the saw. So I don't work long
Hmm.
hours. I mean, when I was a 20-year-old, I might have worked 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. In my practice in Del Mar, I would walk out the back door of my office across a field into the front door of my apartment. That was my routine.
Hmm.
I learned how to become much more effective and efficient. So now I really work about 15 to 20 hours a week. Instead of retiring from practice at age 62, I'm retired in practice, and I've picked a lifestyle and a routine that I hope to be able to continue. Well, if average, like everybody else, I should get 2 more decades. If I'm sort of unlucky, 1 decade or less. And if I'm do really well, we tend to have longevity in our family. I should get 3 more decades.
Yeah.
And I picked a pace
Yeah.
that I could continue for the rest of my life, so that I have on
And it,
Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, I'm retired. And on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday morning, I'm in practice.
yeah. I'm sure that your listeners or our listeners are also moved a bit by this being, I don't know if you can know this, but this functionality, this functionality of smoothness, the eternity, if you will, the eternal, the capacity to be to look at longevity as part of your pacing path, it appears to arise from your daily meditative or yogic practices, that there's something here that allows you not to be knocked off your perch very easily and to just smoothly go into, maybe I'll live 10, maybe I'll live 20, maybe I'll live 30, but I'm pacing myself to be able to live high quality during whatever number of days.
Yes, absolutely. That I started this about a decade ago, where I thought to myself, well, it actually started earlier than that. I had a chiropractic consultant that I coached with named Greg Stanley of Whitehall Management, and he wisely encouraged people to think about not retiring from practice, but to retire in practice, and to think about being more effective and efficient, and to reduce their hours and days so that they could live the retired life a couple of days a week. And I'm at the peak of my skills right now. In fact, I think my skills get better every day that I practice. So if I've spent my life developing these skills to help people, why would I retire at the peak of my career when my skills are at their peak? I'm certainly at my physical. I would say the percentage of the possible fitness that I could, and I want to distinguish between fitness and health and performance. They're three different things. But as relative to how fit I could possibly be at this age, I'm at a higher percentage of my possible fitness at 62 than I have been at any age in my life.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy right now.
You should be. That's quite an achievement, and more than anything, it's quite an achievement to have that going on in the here and now. Right? I mean, you could, like, if you're 90 and you look back and go, when I was 62, I was at the peak performance. That's one thing, and worth congratulating in its own right, that you reached it. But the fact
Well,
that that
for
is
most people, that would be when
intersecting,
they were 20. They were at their, and it's been downhill since
that's
then.
true.
Yeah.
That's true. And, but I guess what I'm pointing to is the intersection between that experience and that happening right now is really the magic is. Like, wow, right this moment, you're at that space. And that's pretty incredible. So, really, a deep, deep, honorable congratulations for that. That's really
Thank you.
fabulous.
I've come to phrase it as following: I hope I live long enough to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
As
Mm-hmm.
you're in the game for longer periods of time, you figure out how to take care of yourself, what diet to eat. Well, we should start with sleep, because that's by far and away the most important. How do I get my sleeping habits good? And then second, my diet. What do I eat? What supplements do I eat? When do I eat? And then probably exercise is number 3. And then I would say meditation comes number 4. And then I would say, for me, chiropractic, the care I get myself comes high on that list. And then I would say all the creative things that I do, surfing, tango, guitar, my relationship with my partner, Rosie, they all come next. And not to diminish how important that those are, but if, in my mind, you have to take care of yourself first and clean up your own kitchen, and then you can be in the position to be open and available to have, if you can have a healthy relationship with yourself and have a healthy relationship with members of your own sex, then you can have a healthy relationship with a member of the opposite sex, if that's your orientation.
Yeah. All right. I'm with you on that. Even then, of course, it's a bit of a challenge. And you and Rosie appear to have just what appears to me, anyways, to be an extraordinary, loving relationship for the most part, anyways, and that there's some sort of sense of the two magical beings that you are when you're together, like a mutual respect for that, or a capacity to dance together, both figuratively and literally.
Well,
And
we met a tango. We met a
ta-
tango right before lockdown started. Yes.
okay, well, that makes sense then. And there's something about, like, having all this in space, sort of the gift, or what becomes available if you're going to have a relationship with yourself and with, as you say, members of the same sex, and having a steadiness that leaves open the possibility of exploring the magic of being in a relationship with the opposite sex, a presenting beloved, as Rosie is to you. Is that your experience?
It's interesting you should bring that up. I always had problems with um, holidays and weekends throughout my life. About like Sundays were always difficult because I was looking forward to going back to work on Monday. Thank God it's Monday. I can get back to work.
Mm.
As in everything in life, there's like a positive and a negative side of that, or a dark side of that. There's some aspect of self-medicating through exercise and work. And I finally reached a point where I was okay with being alone and not being lonely, which is partly why I really enjoyed the lockdown time. Being very introverted, it's been a very positive time for me. And I understand how the extroverts like Rosie are having a very difficult time. But for me, it's been very positive. I've started a lot of new habits, I've added to my habits. Before lockdown happened, I finally came to a place of peace and ease where I go, oh, I'm okay with being alone and not feeling lonely. And then immediately after that, I met someone, Rosie, and was able to be in a relationship because I think I was okay by myself.
Yeah, yeah, you got to choose instead of a have to, maybe. Like it came your way when you were ready to not need it or something, or not think you needed it. That's interesting. I think a lot of people report that. You sort of give up on looking, and that's what you would.
Yeah, exactly. I had given up on looking. I said to myself, you know what? I'm okay with aloneness because I'm not
Yeah.
feeling lonely. And when I got to that place,
Hmm.
that's when I
Well, that's
met someone.
beautiful. Another thing in the world of loneliness and being present and being quiet and being meditative and being in relationship with the world around you and being with water and nature and skill set and, well, I think you probably know where I might be going here. You just said it in passing and you didn't list it as one of your 7 or 8 things. um, I want to ask you a little bit about fly fishing.
Oh, one of my favorites.
I know. And so tell us a little bit about that. I think we're tapping on that in the perfect point in this conversation. Tell me how fly fishing fits into Zail Khalsa's life.
There's a British Columbia Canadian author, Roderick Haig Brown, who was probably one of the world's first conservationists. He was the chancellor of the University of Victoria on Vancouver Island. He served as judge essentially for all of the northern part of Vancouver Island. He was in Campbell River. And in a book he wrote, he said, there's a famous essay he wrote, and he said, it's possible for me that fishing is only a good excuse to be near rivers. And if it is, I'm glad I thought of it. And
Mm.
I think for me, surfing and fly fishing are really good excuses to be in not just a passive observer of nature, but an active participant. Like you're actually immersed in water. You're immersed in nature when you surf and when you fly fish. And I started
Mm.
fly fishing very young in life. I was born and raised in Buffalo, New York. And my dad was not a fly fisherman, but he was a very avid fisherman. And we would go out boating on Lake Ontario and Lake Erie and the Niagara River. And back in the 70s, they started planting steelhead and salmon in the Great Lakes. And just like they do on the West Coast, they migrate from the ocean into the rivers. And in the Great Lakes, the fish migrate from the Great Lakes into the rivers to spawn. And so we started to go fly fishing. I was sort of initially enamored with tying flies. And from there, I got into the art of fly casting. And I guess it's very similar to like surfing and tango, that they are not hobbies, but more lifestyles.
Hmm.
And for me, fly fishing is a way to be closer to nature because you're actually immersed in the river. You're aware of the cycles. Like, okay, it's this time of the year. So this in this time of the day, and the water is this temperature. So there's certain bugs that are hatching at this time, and we don't see them on the surface, but if we pick up a rock underneath and we look at those bugs, we know, oh, that's an X, Y, and Z. And we know that those bugs are floating through the stream, and we know that fish are keying into them. And well, this particular fly that I tied imitates that really well. It gives the impression. The other thing is that's really beautiful is that the flies are all, they're not realistic imitations of the insects. They are impressionistic application of natural materials to create the impression of a living thing. And fly fishing gets to the point, like we're all catch and release. We don't need, and at some points, you actually cut off the hook and you just fish for the grab, for the fish to, you're trying to get the fish to, I guess the greatest experience I ever had fly fishing was on the Copper River, also known as the Zymotes, in British Columbia on the Skeena River system, which is pretty much up almost to Alaska. So we're talking northern British Columbia, and it's one of the, or maybe the world's largest undammed water system. And it's known for its prolific runs of steelhead, which is rainbow trout that act like a salmon, and had the great fortune of fly fishing there with a very famous fly fisherman, Lanny Waller. And with him and the guide watching on two actual back-to-back casts, and I'm talking real back-to-back casts, with a dry fly, meaning a fly that's floating on the surface of the water, not below the water, so you can see it the whole time. I caught two large, in the mid-teens, 15 to 20 pound steelhead on back-to-back casts with a dry fly at the 32-mile marker where of the Zymotes. Both the guide and this famous fly fisherman were there to witness it. And it's seeing a fish come up through. So the fish are deep under the water column, but they see the fly floating up on the surface, and they literally come up through the water column, and a 15-pound steelhead is like two and a half feet long. I mean, it's a big fish. Yeah. I mean, and they come and a bucket opens up on the surface and your fly disappears. Now, here's the funny thing. You can't react to that because you pull the fly away from the fish. So the first time it happened, I jerked the fly away from the steelhead, and the guide goes, okay, pretend you're on Quaaludes, which I thought was a really funny thing to say. People, you'd have to be around from the 70s to realize that Quaaludes were a kind of barbiturate.
I got that.
So he said, act like you're on Quaaludes.
They were a kind of barbiturate, for sure. They were a kind. They were their own
so
kind.
He said, pretend you're on Quaaludes. Yeah. So literally, you see this big, like a toilet bowl flushing, and your fly disappearing off the surface, and you have to watch the fly go down, 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 and then you set the hook.
Oh.
So, but on actual really back-to-back casts, I actually caught. And catching a steelhead on a dry fly is like the epitome. Well, for many of us, it's the absolute pinnacle of fly fishing, is to catch a large steelhead on a dry fly. And I have to say, these were not swung dry flies; these were dead drifted dry flies. So I really accomplished the real pinnacle of fly fishing.
Right.
And the interesting thing was, in a dream about 2 weeks before I went fishing, I knew I was planning the trip, but I saw the whole thing happen in my head before it actually happened in reality. And I guess that's the peak of my fly fishing experiences. I really love it. I'm overdue for a trip. I went.
You're coming
We're gonna go. Yeah, you live in a perfect area for fly fishing.
Well, let's get this done sooner than later. I mean, I actually have something I want to talk to you about offline. You might want to hold the date June 10th to June 13th until we talk about it, if that's still available. But we'll take that offline afterwards. It's some very, very exciting, super exciting, actually. Anyhow, so here's the thing, Zale. I wonder, now we've talked about tango surfing and fly fishing as being, yeah, the average listener may not put those three things as being entirely related to each other. And in your world, they really are three peas in a pod, or three genres of music, or maybe three pieces of music in a similar genre, actually. And I've been trying to piece together, as you speak to me about fly fishing, how this interfaces with either surfing or tango, or maybe even meditation. Like there's a surrender here. There's like the power of giving it up.
Oh, that's interesting. You should say it that way. Yeah. Fly,
Yeah.
well, fly fishing. The fly fishing magazines, one of them at least, has the byline, the contemplative sport,
Hmm.
and
Hmm. Hmm.
the kind of fly fishing I picked, which is dry fly fishing for steelhead, and I suppose dry fly fishing for Atlantic salmon would be in the same category, is that it's the most zen of all fly fishing because you can't really have any expectation of catching fish. Steelheading is called like the fish of 1,000 casts. So, for example, I've gone on steelhead fly fishing trips where I have literally started casting at, like, say, 12 hours a day for an entire week and not hooked a single fish. Steelheaders would say, I fished well. It's the experience of casting, it's the experience of reading the water, of working the fly, of presenting the fly with really not necessarily any expectation of actually catching a fish. Like, you don't go fishing unless you like to catch fish. Everybody who fishes likes to catch fish. The question is, do you enjoy fishing? Most people don't. They enjoy catching. They don't enjoy. I think Thoreau said, "Many a man spends their entire life going fishing, not knowing that it wasn't fish that they sought." For me, it's a meditative sport,
Yes.
as is surfing. Any surfer can tell you
Yes.
the real joy of surfing. Surfers will go surfing just to get wet. Like, that's a common expression among surfers. Oh, we just went out and got wet. The waves weren't that good, but we got wet. It's because you go out in the ocean and it's like worshiping in the church of the blue sky. For us, it's going to church. And I would say tango is the same thing. The
Exactly.
Malanga, the
Exactly. That's
Malanga
exactly
is
what I
the
would say.
Malanga is
Yep.
the church of tango. Malanga is a place where
Hmm.
a place where the tango event, which is called the Malanga, is held. So you can dance a Malanga, add a Malanga to a Malanga. So Malanga is both a place, a specific tango rhythm, and a specific event.
Well, this is really interesting. So now we have really your meditative practice, or maybe your practice of practice.
Yeah, everything I do is a kind of meditation, to be honest with you. Yeah, it really is.
Yes,
My
yes,
chiropractic
yes.
is a
And so now this,
meditation. Everything I do is a meditation.
yes,
Yes. Yeah.
yes, yes, which answers the question of whether or not you're meditating in between your
Yes.
meditations. The answer is yes, you are, of course. Look at
Yes.
your life. Look at your life. And that's what we have. That's what we're looking at, is that the similarity, all of a sudden, our listeners and myself are caught up with the similarity of these seemingly very different sports, very different activities. Seriously, tango, surfing, fly fishing, and kundalini, they
And
don't
don't forget
look
guitar.
like,
Yeah.
and guitar, right? And guitar, and your chiropractic, and really the whole thing.
Yeah, Olympic
Um,
weightlifting too, for
they
that
don't,
matter, is very, yeah, and
weightlifting too.
specifically Olympic lifting, the snatch and the clean and jerk, like they do at the Olympics, are very meditative. It's all a mind thing. It's
Yes.
mind over iron. Yeah, that's why one of the leading magazines is called Iron Mind, because that's what it is. It's, you lift the weight with your mind, not with your muscles.
The power of the sea, the kingdom of wisdom, an eye out on a spiritual journey. You hold your name pretty well, Zale.
My spiritual teacher said, if you don't live up to your destiny, you'll fall victim to your fate.
Beautiful. My goodness.
So I've endeavored to keep my destiny in mind throughout the whole process of my life. We haven't talked about it, but I had a tremendous amount of trauma early in my life.
I know you have. And you know what? I'm not even going to, well, let's suffice it to say that I know that a little, on only a little bit about it. You've talked about it with me, and actually, Alex has told me some of it as well. And, this topic of having to have, I talked to Alexandra just earlier this week about mm, the magic of of shamanism, of straddling between realms, and it was like, oh, they can't teach that. You have to, then you don't go to school to learn how to be a shaman. You're gifted or blessed with the opportunity to ride the realms. And she mentioned to me that, well, one thing you have to have is you have to have lived a life. You have to have lived a life to find the beauty on the backside of just relaxing into what it
Well,
means to live life.
something
You
came
have
up
to.
about that. Can I
Yeah.
interject?
Yes, of course.
So I'm a child of the 70s. I was very fortunate. The RA, the resident assistant or whatever they call them in college
Yep. Yep. All
at the
right.
University of
Yep.
Rochester, was a Grateful Dead fan. And he
Yay.
encouraged me and other friends to go to the Rochester 76 and 77 shows, which, by the way, are highly regarded among Dick's picks. Um, the first time I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I, I
It
sat in
takes
the
a
back
while.
and meditated, and I didn't quite get it. But by the time I went the second time, I had already experienced cannabis and other tryptamines. So I was a little more prepared for it, and I had a really enjoyable experience. But I don't think I really appreciated the Grateful Dead until many years of living had passed, and I could relate to the deep sentiments in Robert Hunter's lyrics. They are
Mhm.
relatively obtuse, but over time, the emotional content of his lyrics, and likewise, the deep emotional content in tango, and playing, for that matter, I like to play psychedelic blues, Hendrix, and things like that. That's the kind of guitar I play.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
Buddy Guy said it pretty well. He said, if you haven't had the blues or don't know what the blues is, don't worry. If you live life long enough, you'll
You'll
know.
know.
You'll
That's great.
know.
That's
And
great.
and
Hmm. Exactly. And this is what Alexandra said. This is what we're talking about. Exactly my point right there. You have to earn your stripes to appreciate the dead,
yes, and tango for that, and
the
that for
Grateful
that
Dead,
matter. Yeah,
and
yeah, for that
tango.
matter. Yeah.
Hmm.
You can't, I don't believe you can appreciate tango until you've suffered some heartbreak and loss in your life.
Isn't that incredible? What an incredible, incredible insight.
Tango grew out of the immigrant experience in Buenos Aires between, let's say, 1850 and 1960. Okay, so over about a 100-year period of time, there was massive immigration from primarily Europe, southern Italy, France, Poland, England, Germany, people escaping World War One and Two, people escaping from other, famines. There was a famine in southern Italy, and so they hopped on boats. Some of those boats went to America, and they became Americans, and other people got on boats that went to South America, and they became Argentinians. And the music reflects a longing for belonging, nostalgia about their homes and families, because the men went across. So here's another source of tango: the men went across, but there were no women. The men went across to build lives, and if they made it and became wealthy or well established, then they could afford to bring their families across. So There were extreme amounts of loneliness. And so the tango grew as a mechanism of coping and turning that suffering into joy and into happiness.
Yeah, we're right on topic. That's exactly what I the synchronicity of life is what I was going to point to. I've been looking directly with my best friend and soon to be major business partner at exactly this issue of trauma sourcing wisdom, essentially, that they can't exist without each other. There's like a true wisdom comes with having faced life and lost a few times.
Well, I think now we're getting into the Jung territory of
Yeah, of the
yes, yes,
shadow and the losses.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I don't think
All
I
right.
understood that
Well,
until I experienced tango.
yeah. Well, it's been wonderful. And really, this whole idea of threading these things together that don't necessarily seem like complementary jewels is pretty extraordinary, Zail. And I really appreciate it. And I really, I think just dancing with you or hovering over the top of why these things turn you on, or in fact, why you're drawn forth or used by these things makes so much sense. And thank goodness for you to have found these areas and then pursued them and made them such an important part of your life, and how now you get to have an effect not only on your patient load, but on your friends, on Rosie, on me, and maybe on some listeners now. Like, who you get to be by being you is someone who can make an impact. In fact, make an impact on others around you without actually, having even to put your hands on them or meet them physically. So thank you for being exactly who you are. It's really wonderful.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
My pleasure indeed. You're very welcome. And how my listeners, or are your listeners, our listeners, may want to know how to get closer to you, how to get in touch with you, how to follow you, maybe how to look you up, or who knows.
Go to my website, drzail.com. That's drzail.com.
Drzail.com. All right. And is there anything else you want to say? Is there anything you want to say about where this conversation is? Any kind of maybe open ends that I forgot to close, or anything you want to add to what the beauty that you've already delivered?
I think we came in a nice circle and tied it all up in a nice knot. So I'm happy.
What do you do with a fly? You tie a fly, right? Isn't
You
it
tie
how?
a fly, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, maybe that's what we did. I look forward to our fly fishing. I really do look forward to talking to you about this event on June 10th. That'll be offline here momentarily. And it has been a deep pleasure to catch up with you and to get to know you at a much more intimate level, and to explore with you what makes Zail Khalsa, Zail Khalsa, and you know, why is it that Alexandra loves you so much? And now I really get it. It's really been
She's like
lovely.
my sister.
Isn't that great? I
Yeah, I love her deeply.
She's something. She is
Yeah.
something for sure. I know. I pinch myself.
In closing, I'd like to say that's one of the beautiful things of tango is that you develop, or I've developed, and I know many other tango dancers, you develop non-sexual relationships with members of the opposite sex, because as a tango dancer you typically dance with members of the opposite sex who become your friends, and in a non you have a non-sexual relationship that is very deeply intimate and
Isn't that
personal.
great? It is. It's beautiful.
And it's probably one of the most beautiful aspects of tango.
Well, you should know, and I think my listeners know, especially the ones who, for whatever reason, are listening to episode after episode. My last, podcast was with Journey Rocco, and so we talked about tango just last week. And Journey is my tango teacher and was here just last night, giving me my fourth of 10 lessons. So it's really fun to have Journey. She lives up here in our area, and so feel free to check out that podcast if you haven't heard it. It really turned out wonderful, and it's very aligned with some of the things you've said about tango too. So I'm sure you'll appreciate it.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. And for those of you who are still on this, this wonderful conversation, thank you for hanging on to this point. It really has been wonderful to share with you my new and, ongoing friend, my new fly fishing buddy, my new tango buddy, my new meditative buddy. And really, for whatever reason, he's also uh, sort of my mentor in taking cold showers every morning, but that's a different topic. And so it's been a pleasure, Zail Khalsa, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm sure my listeners share their deep admiration and gratitude for you being here. So thank you for coming on again. We'll catch you on the flip side, and we'll see you, I'm sure, sooner than later. Thanks again, Zail.
Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Bye for now. And listeners, take care. Remember, everything's probably going to be all right. And even if it isn't, it's going to be all right. Remember, it's just another day and a beautiful day at that. Welcome to humanity, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Bye for now.
Hey, welcome to Humanity family. It's Ryan Levesque here, co-producer of the show. I truly hope you enjoyed Dr. Fred's in-depth conversation today. If you did, and if the conversations we share each week are making a difference for you, could you please take just a moment to leave a rating and a short review on Apple Podcasts? Your enthusiastic review helps new listeners discover the show. Your support here really does make a difference. I'd also like to invite you to reach out to a friend or two who would appreciate today's episode. Maybe shoot them a quick text or email, or maybe pick up the phone and invite them to subscribe to the Welcome to Humanity podcast so they can be enriched from the discovery of amazing ideas and insights each week. As always, you can find past episodes along with the complete show notes and links at welcometohumanity.net/podcast. If you'd like to explore how working one-on-one with Dr. Fred can help you break through whatever challenges you might be facing with your mental health or well-being, leading to new levels of freedom and vitality, I invite you to reach out to us directly by emailing Dr. Fred at welcometohumanity.net. That's DRFRED at welcometohumanity.net. Thanks so much for listening, and keep an ear out for another captivating conversation next week. Have a beautiful day, a beautiful week, and indeed, a beautiful life. Welcome to humanity.